Hello everyone and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else while I try and wrangle in this whole mental health thing, which still isn't going well, but that's beside the point. Now, today I want to take a step back from the turmoiling political sphere that is currently the Commander format and just talk about some deck building for right now. One of the things I've enjoyed immensely about deck building is how you can take a concept and build it out in so many different ways. Now, what do I mean by that? I have a human deck that I built a while ago. It was with Theoden, King of Rohan. Messel very much enjoyed the deck, but then I also got my hands on Kyler, Sigardian Emissary, and I was like, I kind of want to build this too. So I did. And seeing how they both kind of shook out to where they are now is a testament to how you can build a similar theme, but do it in so many different directions. So, we have Kyler, who is 3, a green and a white, for a 2/2 human cleric. Whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on Kyler, and other humans you control get +1/+1 for each counter on Kyler. So there is a very obvious +1/+1 theme there, but also tokens kind of being one of those main sub-themes. But with Theoden, King of Rohan, it's 1, a red and a white, for a 2/3 human noble, that whenever he or another human enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gains double strike till end of turn. So in his case, there's still that token sub-theme to get, humans into play, but his leans much more on legendary creatures than Kyler's does, with his total being 18 legendary creatures and Kyler having 10. The Boros deck also has a higher concentration of creatures at 34 as its total instead of 29 in the Kyler deck. Now, is there a lot of overlapping in this deck? Then, yeah, there is, especially in the removal spells. White has very good, efficient, single-target removal spells. They are all in both of these decks. They're just too good not to be. And that list has grown as of Outlaws of Thunder Junction, so you have your typical Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, Generous Gift, and then more recently we've gotten Stroke of Midnight and Bovine Intervention. Those are kind of like the core 5 white removal spells. And, well, yes, some are better than the others. They're all very good in their own right. The one thing I do know, because I kind of built these with just whatever I had on hand, there are definitely some cards in one deck that I would like to have in the other deck, but I just don't have 2 copies of that card. There are certain cards that are just harder to get a hold of right now that I only can put in one deck unless I find another one I have squirreled away somewhere, but I've been through everything and I don't think I do. That said, these decks do fundamentally play different. There's different lines to play. There's different needs to know when to, get your commander out. It brings your deck building into a different level if you can sit down and say, okay, these decks are fundamentally similar, but how can I make them different enough that playing one after the other doesn't feel like the same deck? And that's kind of the balance I've strode for, and so far I think I've gotten it. So, yeah, that's kind of it. I do think, just to keep things moving, when I come back to do my look at this deck thing, I'm going to go with Theoden first, just because he was the first deck I built. And then next week, we'll go over Kyler. That just seems to be the best way for me to move forward here. And with that said, I will be right back. Alright, and we are back. Now, we are going to be starting off with Theoden, King of Rohan. The deck is called All Hail the King. So, Theoden, King of Rohan, once again, is 1 a red and a white for a 2/3 human noble. Whenever Theoden or another human enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Now, again, like I said in the first part, this deck did kind of slide into more legendary creatures mattering. Part of that is Boros likes its legendary creatures, but they also really helped. So some of the legends that ended up in this deck are like Adeline, Resplendent Cathar, which is 1 white for a star 4 human knight with vigilance. Power is equal to the number of creatures you control, and whenever you attack for each opponent, you create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. This allows you to give things double strike on the fly, and just very good with what we're doing. Next to her, we have Adriana, Captain of the Guard, which is 3 a red and a white for a 4/4 human knight with melee. And other creatures you control have melee. So melee is whenever the creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each opponent you attacked this turn. If we had ways to give them more melee, it would stack, but for the most part, she's just going to try and make our creatures bigger so they're harder to block. Next up, we have Baragond of the Guard. 3 and a white for a 3/3 human soldier. Whenever he or another human enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1/+1 and vigilance till end of turn. The vigilance part there is the big thing. We are constantly trying to attack, and having vigilance allows us to block profitably as well. Now, I call him the backup Theoden, but he does something slightly different. That's Bruce Tara Boorish Herder. For 2 a red and a white, you get a 3/3 human ally. Whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, target creature you control gains double strike and lifelink till end of turn. So there are times when you run into a string of turns where you're just not finding a creature to play or a way to make a token, and he helps facilitate that. Now, this one is in there just because there is a large number of other legendary creatures, and that's Eomer, Marshal of Rohan. 2 red for a 4/4 human knight with haste. Whenever one or more attacking legendary creatures you control dies, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, yeah, people are going to want to kill our legends. Let's see. We also have Eowyn, Fearless Knight. 2 a red and a white for a 3/4 human knight with haste. Whenever she enters the battlefield, exile target creature and opponent controls with greater power. Legendary creatures you control gain protection from each of that creature's colors till end of turn. This one goes especially ham with Duke Older Ravengard. So Duke Older Ravengard is 4 a red and a white for a 5/5 human noble soldier. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and myriad till end of turn. So if you pair that with Eowyn, you get to exile 3 additional creatures or 2 additional creatures, depending on how many opponents you have. and give all of your legends protection from those colors. You can do that with Aomer, King of Rohan, which is 3 red-white for a 2/2 human noble with double strike. Enters with the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other human you control, but whenever he enters the battlefield, target player becomes the monarch, and he deals damage equal to its power to any target. So, if you attack with Aomer and you make 3 copies because of Duke, Older Ravengard, the way that stacks is one of your opponents will become the monarch. But then you will get those additional damage pings on top of that before they disappear to the legend rule. We got slightly more utility things with like Erkebrand, Lord of Westfold. 3 in red for a 3/3 human soldier. Whenever Erkebrand or another human enters the battlefield under your control, creatures will go get +1/+1 or +1/+0 till end of turn. So again, with the Duke, you just get to get extra damage in with them. There is one more legendary that is very much needed for this kind of deck, and that is Iroas, God of Victory. 2, a red and a white for a 7/4 god, indestructible. As long as your devotion to red and white is less than 7, he isn't a creature. Creatures you control have Menace, and prevent all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control. So again, this just allows you to keep attacking. Alright, but let's touch on some of our non-legendary creatures. The first one I want to talk about is Thalia's Lieutenant. 1 in a white for a 1/1 human soldier. When she enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on each human you control, each other human. And whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant. So this is just a creature that can, A, help the team once and then continually grow. And that's pretty good. Now, we are in Boros. Boros sometimes struggles to get lands out. So that's where Keeper of the Accord comes in. 3 in a white for a 3/4 human soldier. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more creatures than you, you make a 1/1 white soldier creature token. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a basic plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So, very good. We are also running the Bastion Protector. 2 and a white for a 3/3 human soldier. Commander creatures you control have +2/+2 and indestructible, which goes really well with actually Adric Lumark Marshal. 3 and a white human soldier, 3/3. At the beginning of each combat, creature you control gain first strike. If a creature you control has first strike, the same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. It's he go good. The last two I want to talk about here are Intrepid Adversary, which is 1 and a white for a 3/1 human scout with lifelink. When he enters the battlefield, you can pay 1 and a white any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, put that many Valor counters on Intrepid Adversary, and then creatures you control get +1/+1 for each Valor counter on Intrepid Adversary. So he's, an anthem on a body. But no, the best creature in this deck is Riders of Rohan. It's 3, a red and a white for a 4/4 human knight that says when Riders of Rohan enter the battlefield, create 2/2 red human knight creature tokens with trample and haste. And that doesn't sound that great, but it has dash for 4, a red and a white, and it does everything it said above that, but it also tacks on return this card to your hand at the end of your turn. So the number of times I've been playing this deck and I just get to 6 mana and go, Riders, make 2 dudes, or technically 3 dudes, give 3 things double strike, attack, return next turn, play it again, make 2 more. It just kind of snowballs. And yeah. Now, I mentioned this deck does not have a ton of sorceries. The only removal in our sorceries is actually Vandal Blast, which is a single red mana for a sorcery to destroy a target artifact you don't control, or you can overload it for 4 in a red and then turn it into each instead of target. We have Rally at the Hornburg, which is 1 in a red for a sorcery. Create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. Humans you control gain haste till the end of turn. That's the main reason it's there, is to give basically my whole board haste if I need to. And then Call for Aid. 4 and a red. Sorcery. Gain control of all creatures target opponent controls till end of turn. Untap those creatures that gain haste till end of turn. You can't attack that player this turn, and you can't sacrifice those creatures this turn. So, yes, I understand you can't take away their blockers and then attack them. The main point of this card is to ruin one opponent enough that they cannot attack you. Ideally, you would want to take all of the creatures from one opponent and send them into your third opponent, and then best case scenario, you either wipe out that opponent or he's forced to make blocks that leave opponent 1 and opponent 3's boards basically decimated. And then you can focus on, opponent 2 instead with your own creatures. So that's why this is here. It can fundamentally change the board state to a point that is going to make it easier for us to win. Now, let's touch on instants. We already know the core ones with the Bovine Intervention, Generous Gift, Path to Exile, Stroke of Midnight, and Swords to Plowshares. In addition, we're also running Wear Tear, which is a fuse card. One side is 1 in a red, destroy an artifact. The other side is a single white to destroy an enchantment. You can cast both for paying for both. We also have a Boros Charm in here, which is a red and a white for an instant. Choose one, it either deals 4 damage to a player. Permanents you control gain indestructible till end of turn, or target creature gains double strike till end of turn. So this is another way to get double strike if we don't have a way to do it. But mostly this gets saved to save your board from a board wipe, essentially. And that's mostly what the instants are doing. Now, as for artifacts, we already know we have rocks. Clearly, we don't need to touch on the fact that there's going to be a Soul Ring and an Arcane Signet. But we also have the Boros Signet, the Talisman of Conviction. So those are both rocks that can produce the Boros colors. Signet is 2, and then you pay 1, tap it, and make Boros, so red-white. And the Talisman of Conviction is 2. It can either tap for a colorless, or it can tap for a red or a white and deal 1 damage to you. There are a couple artifacts that I know are in both decks. The first one is the Horn of Gondor, which is honestly probably the best artifact in both of these decks. It is a 3-mana legendary artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you make a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. But for 3 and a tap, you can make X 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of humans you control. So, yeah, that's very good. We are running Vanquisher's Banner in both of these decks to help facilitate some card draw. 5-mana artifact. When it comes in, you choose a creature type. It'll be human. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, but whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. And then the other one that I'm pretty sure is in both decks is Blade of Selves. 2-mana equipment. Creature has Myriad, equips for 4. And yeah, does fun things. Now, looking at the enchantments in this deck, I know there's a few in here that aren't in the other one that should be in the other one, but again, I only have the one copy. Those two are actually Cathar's Crusade, which is 3 white enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. And Legion Loyalty, which is 6 white for an enchantment. Creatures you control have Myriad. Those two, I need to get more to just have to put around. And I know Legion's loyalty isn't that expensive. I'm not in the position to buy cards right now. Now, there are a few of the other enchantments that are in red, so they can't be in both decks. The first one there is Nahiri's Resolve. 3, a red and a white for an enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have haste. And that's the main reason it's in there. But at the beginning of your end step, exile any number of non-token artifacts and or creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield at the beginning of your next end step. We're also running Oath of Earl. 3, a red and a white for a saga. Step 1 is create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. So, again, goes pretty good with our commander. Step 2 is create 2 2/2 red human knight creature tokens with trample and haste. Again, goes pretty good with our commander. And then the last step is put an indestructible counter on up to 1 target human and you become the monarch. So, very good. And then as long as something has indestructible and we have Audric out, everything has indestructible on combat. So, good times. The last 2 we're running here are Rising of the Day, 2 in a red enchantment. Creatures you control have haste, and legendary creatures you control get +1/+0. And finally, Shared Animosity, 2 in a red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 till end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. So, yeah, good times. Now, that is where I'm going to bring this to an end. We're already running over 20 minutes, and I'm tired, and I still got stuff I gotta do today. So, I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.